having your full body present in VR is one of the craziest feelings out there.
At Refract, our vision is to extend the human experience beyond reality.
But this would really be good, like, training practice
For
better
sure.
than shadowboxing for sure.
I love full body tracking, and that is no secret. From being able to roundhouse kick barbarians in the face in Blade and Sorcery, and feeling the presence of your very own body in VR chat, I believe full body tracking opens up a whole new world of fun and possibilities in VR that just isn't possible with only your head and hands. I've been using full body in one way or another for as long as it's been possible to plug and connect into your PC, but of all the solutions that I've plugged, programmed, soldered and designed my way into using, this set of trackers right here has to be one of the most interesting ones that I've used in a while. Welcome to Axis Lite. First of all, what on earth are Axis trackers in the first place? Well, Axis are a set of real-time, low-latency IMU-based trackers by Refract Technologies that's main purpose has been to democratize motion capture and make highly adaptable, industry-quality full-body motion tracking much more accessible to regular consumers. While that's all and good for the animation studios and VTubers out there that might use a setup like this for content creation, Axis trackers are also fully OpenXR and SteamVR compatible, and have even gone so far as to garner the attention of World Taekwondo to be used as the very full-body tracking solution that was used in their World Olympics esports series, where competitors of different ages and weight classes were able to compete using VR despite those differences usually making that impossible, which is honestly quite revolutionary. But even with all of those high-profile collaborations and the attention of some rather surprising people, why on earth have most of us as VR users never heard of them before? Have you heard of Axis trackers before?
No, I have not.
What?
Well, that itself is the exact reason. For the 2 years that the Axis team have been around since their initial Kickstarter, their tracker sets have been much more focused on the prosumer crowd, and mainly for the purposes of studio mocap production and such. Up until now, the lowest end option they offered was their standard set of Axis trackers, which consisted of a whopping 9 individual nodes and currently cost over $700 with their Pro set only getting even more elaborate and more expensive than that. While they are indeed supposedly able to handle and capture some of the fastest kicks in the world, and are actually quite the bargain compared to other industry standard solutions like Rococo and their $2,000 mocap suit, the general VR user doesn't really need that to kick a few virtual asses, or just generally capture your body language for better immersion in social VR, and that's usually where the story would end. But when the Axis team reached out to me and offered to send me a set of their upcoming consumer-focused trackers for review, with a story as interesting as that, and my ever-present fascination for unique and obscure VR tech, of course, I could hardly refuse. So let's get into it, shall we? Axis Lite is basically just a smaller collection of Axis's regular IMU trackers geared towards their more casual VR users that just want decent full body tracking without the faff and heavy price tag of their higher end sets. Fundamentally, the Axis trackers operate on the same basic principles as SlimeVR and pretty much any other IMU-based tracking solutions. That being that they measure the angles of your joints, reconstruct your body's pose based off of that, and then pass the data onto SteamVR's tracking points in 3D space, resulting in full body tracking that doesn't need any base stations and doesn't suffer from any kind of occlusion, which is a massive upside compared to solutions like Vive trackers. There's also a lot more to like about Axis Lite as well, because the first thing you're greeted with when you open the box is not a love letter from the Axis team, naughty naughty, that's just for me, hehe XD, but the 4 tracking nodes responsible for tracking your legs, and the charging dock that they come in. This charging dock on its own is already a massive upside over many of the other IMU-based tracking solutions, because instead of having to remember to charge each tracker individually, or having an absolute octopus of USB cables to charge them all at the same time, you can just chuck all of your nodes in the dock, and they'll charge off of the single cable and USB power delivery charger that comes included in the box, which is an absolute godsend. The proprietary USB dongle you get with the Axis trackers is also a huge bonus as well, because you don't have to worry about your router being too far away from your play space like you do with Wi-Fi based trackers like SlimeVR. Just plug the dongle into your PC and you're off to the races. No need to mess with USB Wi-Fi adapters and buggy Windows hotspots. The straps and node holders you wear while using them are also really nice as well, because they've got a grippy silicone backing and the holders themselves are made from silicone as well. While a bit tight for my healthy Neanderthal Western frame, they stayed exactly where I put them on my legs, and everything was nice and comfortable, and I didn't find I had to worry about readjusting my trackers mid-session. Pretty much everything screams quality and well thought out when it comes to the hardware, which is something clearly inherited from the higher end sets, but the price also reflects that too. Compared to the base 5 tracker set of SlimeVR, Axis Lite will end up costing around $350 US at the time of their release in May. Well, that is quite a bit steeper than the $195 that SlimeVR are quoting, especially considering you only get 4 IMU nodes instead, which we'll definitely get back to later. It still is quite a bit cheaper than Mocapi, which sits at a hefty $100 more, and definitely poses an intriguing dilemma as to how it'll stack up value-wise. That aside, the setup process for Axis Lite follows the same theme of quality and intuitiveness for the most part as well, because the Axis Control Center software you use with the trackers on your PC takes you through a really fantastic in-depth first-time tour showing you how all of the functions inside of it work and how to get your trackers set up and connected properly. Just set the software to pairing mode, hold the button on the side of the node until they buzz twice, using their built-in haptic motor, which did indeed scare the shit out of me the first time, but also can be used to figure out which node is which without having to do so much as touch them. Then just drag them onto your body where you need them on the diagram, and hit calibrate in the next tab over to get them all centered up and ready for SteamVR. Except not, because the SteamVR side of the Axis software is where things start to get a bit ugly. To begin with, for some reason, the Axis Control Center software doesn't automatically install its own SteamVR drivers, and the download for them is buried in an obscure corner of their website with no mention of it whatsoever in the setup process at all. This means that when you try and boot SteamVR with the trackers all set up and ready for the first time, they just outright don't work, and there is absolutely no indication as to what might be wrong. Once you do figure out how to get the SteamVR driver installed, the Axis trackers do indeed manage to connect to SteamVR as they should, but after only a few minutes of use, it is incredibly obvious that there is a lot of work to be done here to make the tracking anywhere near competitive. As you may have already noticed, the main difference about Axis Lite compared to your usual set of IMU trackers is that the Lite set only comes with 4 IMU nodes, as opposed to the usual minimum of 5 you see in most other solutions. While you would usually have 4 trackers on your legs and 1 somewhere on your torso, Axis have instead opted to only track your legs with IMU data and leave the hip and spine estimation up to their software to figure out. While certainly an unorthodox approach, I was assured by representatives at Axis that there was indeed a proper algorithm in place to guesstimate the position of your spine and upper body, to make up for the lack of a physical 5th IMU. And as incredible and as plausible as that sounds, considering a program like Standable can fake convincing Fullbody from literally nothing, for Axis Lite, that just isn't the case. Not only is the tracking quite buggy, and will literally make your legs windmill around your head if you turn more than 180 degrees from the direction you calibrated it in, but the best you're going to get out of Axis Lite when it's actually working in the first place is just a bolt straight spine at all times, with your hips hardly deviating from their position directly underneath your head, no matter how you move or position yourself. Not only is that absolutely terrible for immersion from the first person, because your virtual body is nowhere near close to your real one as you move around, but for social full body applications where body language and nuance are important, to make the tracking even remotely convincing, you basically have to stand at attention at all times and move about like you're a fucking Moai statue in the middle of transit, which is absolutely exhausting and really limits your ability to express yourself, which in my opinion is half the reason to get full body in the first place. What's worse is that the lack of hip estimation also ruins the ability to use the trackers in more functional full body applications as well. Because when you go to kick an enemy in a game like Blade and Sorcery for instance, your body's natural instincts to balance by moving your head back pulls your kick backwards along with it, reducing the range of your legs to the point that you'd probably be more successful trying to poke their eyes out with your fucking nipples. Which might I add, is quite disappointing considering the Axis trackers were literally used in the Olympics for this. While the 5 set of SlimeVR is far from superbly accurate as a full body tracking solution on its own, given that the single torso IMU isn't nearly enough to make up for the 33 individual vertebrae in your spine, which is usually why I recommend 2 IMUs for your upper body, check out my previous video if you want to hear more about that, it at least gives you a semblance of hip estimation and allows it to be used in all of the scenarios that Axis Lite can't. And what kills me is that Axis already supports being able to use your phone as an additional tracking point, but the only thing stopping that from actually working is that Axis's SteamVR implementation is just too rudimentary. All the extra hip node does is just make your hip rotate around at the bottom of that same bolt straight spine, without a single attempt to even bend it in sight. And I'm pretty sure I know why. Axis has always been a set of trackers developed for mocap first, and as far as I can tell, up until the Lite set came around, the Axis trackers just never had any compelling use case in SteamVR, and because of that set of software just didn't see much development beyond its initial implementation. Yes, SteamVR compatibility has been a thing for quite a while with these trackers, but the main way that the Axis trackers were used for regular VR were actually in high-profile collaborations, exactly like the ones with Virtual Taekwondo. So because apps like that use the Axis SDK instead of SteamVR for much better control over the tracking data for each specific application, which when implemented correctly can clearly have some amazing results, none of that development and refinement ever reached the SteamVR side of things with the Axis software, leaving it in a very basic and very broken state for the better part of 9 whole months. But thankfully, not all hope is lost. Being as swift as I am with making videos, other Axis Lite reviews have come out in the time I've been working on mine, and the community around the trackers have actually been able to put together an Axis to SlimeVR translation application that basically avoids Axis's busted SteamVR integration entirely. While of course the SlimeVR server can't fix not having a hip node, and if anything is even less properly equipped to compensate for that than even the Axis software is, but by using a phone as a 5th IMU, using OWOTrack this time instead of through the Axis software itself, The Axis Trackers' tracking quality goes from extremely wonky and buggy to what it should have been in the first place. And what it should have been in the first place is something really, really amazing. Not only do the Axis trackers actually match the performance of the SlimeVR trackers, but they actually outdo them. Over the course of a 4-hour VR session, not once did I have to recenter or recalibrate, because the Axis trackers didn't drift at all. Despite using the exact same physical IMU chips on the inside as SlimeVR, Axis has done some really special magic with the IMU filtering algorithm on the actual trackers, and instead of disabling the magnetometer like SlimeVR does, they take advantage of that to ensure that the trackers know where they're pointed at all times. SlimeVR, even when their first-party IMU modules always drift eventually over the course of 45 minutes, which requires constant attention while in use, and is one of their main drawbacks because of that. But not only do we just have SlimeVR support because of the community, we also have OSC haptic support for VR chat using the built-in haptic motors in the actual nodes themselves. I know I glossed over them earlier as just a clever way to distinguish trackers, but this is genuinely a fantastic idea, because if you're going to be strapping something to your body with a battery and electronics inside it in the first place, why not include a vibration motor as part of that package, and use it as a way to bring even more physical presence to the experience than just the tracking? It's something so simple but really does make a world of difference. Though I do wonder where they got the idea from. The only thing that's really physically inferior about the Axis nodes themselves, and can't be fixed with just a software change, is the fact that their battery life is very short compared to most other solutions, at only 4 hours on a full charge. Not only is that a massive amount shorter than the reported 15 hours of a regular SlimeVR tracker, but they can't be charged while in use because they don't have a standard charging port. And even if you try to give them the 5 volts that they get on the charging dock through, other means, they just shut off as soon as they detect a charging voltage. Trust me, I tried. Other than that issue, the trackers are quite obviously amazing, and the only thing that's holding them back is the ones and zeros that they run on. But the one thing I really want to make sure isn't overlooked is just how involved and passionate the Axis team is, and how genuinely consumer focused they are. Despite the undeniably huge misstep in sending the Axis trackers out to reviewers in this state, they have been constantly going back and forth with us, intently listening to our feedback, and are incredibly serious and proactive about working on and squashing all of these issues that I mentioned before. And not only that, but when fellow eCreature Boneless VR set $100 bounties for the very SlimeVR and OSC haptic support we have today, Axis went out their way to match that and double the rewards to $200. So it's really clear that they just want the trackers to be the best they can be, and I have nothing but good things to say about my experience with the team over there as well. Seriously, you guys have been amazing. But the thing is, I can only review what's in front of me, and what's in front of me is a set of very flawed but incredibly promising trackers. While I do genuinely think that with all of the talent in the Axis dev team, that Axis Lite might actually be able to reach its intended goal of full body tracking with just the leg IMUs at some point, because they are certainly making some headway. Just look at this exclusive sneak peek at the work in progress, though obviously not indicative of the final product. As they are right now, they barely qualify as leg tracking on their own, and only with the use of third-party software did they become even remotely competitive with any other full body solutions. So for now, as much as it breaks my heart, because basically everything else is amazing about these trackers, and they very clearly could be amazing if only the software was right, in this state, I can't really recommend them over any alternatives. Though I am hopeful that will change sooner rather than later. If you're still interested in Axis Lite, you can pre-order a set at the link down below, and if you use my discount code KAYAKSLITE at checkout, you can get a crisp $62 off your order. If you like this video, please leave a like down below, and if you want to see more videos about weird and custom VR hardware, get subscribed and maybe even consider supporting me with a channel membership or a super thanks down in the comments below. I really want to kick this channel into high gear this year, and your support is invaluable to me. So a huge thanks to Shifted and Rifted and Maximilian Collar. And thank you very much for watching. My name's Kai, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.